You're listening to the Mile High Church podcast, and on Wednesday, November 26th, we have a Thanksgiving Eve service led by Dr. Michelle, but featuring Hazel Miller and our Mile High Church choir. It's going to be a lot of fun, and there's going to be a lot of pie, too, so show up a little early. Looking forward to that.
My daughter's favorite day at school is whenever there's a fire drill. There's something endlessly terrifying and yet attractive, so interesting about those alarms. So I always hear when there's a fire drill, and she also shared with me recently the lockdown drills. Voice comes on the intercom, the lights go off in the classroom, all the kids go under their desks, and the most important thing is to not say a word. No word about when this will end. You stay under that desk until the voice comes on the intercom to say that you're safe, that you can move. Haunting, scary, infuriating that our kids have to face the consequence of our civil leaders not even willing to get in a room to discuss the multiple issues that play into mass shootings in our country. This kind of an experience that I had, and I'm not putting down the drills, listening to my daughter, is what I'm referring to this morning as the sorrows of the world. In this day and age, it's like all you need to do is look up to get hit with the sorrows of the world right in your face. In the news this week, Hurricane Melissa, not Melissa, our incredible ASL interpreter, but Hurricane Melissa. Unnecessary death and suffering in Gaza. Terrible atrocities taking place towards human beings in Sudan. Ongoing war in Ukraine. Our initiative, our special initiative this year is the Divine Feminine, and you have to go deeper into the paper to realize that slavery still exists in our world, and it's the subjugation and persecution and imprisonment of women in so many places. It's heartbreaking to see the sorrows of the world. And yet, every morning when I wake up, I affirm and declare, today is going to be a great day. I go into prayer and meditation, and I give thanks for the blessing that is life. I give thanks for all of the good. I welcome the world into my heart, and I invite it to sing. Marilyn Robinson said, "We cannot know that conscious life has appeared only on earth, but we have good ground for assuming that it is rare and extraordinary enough that its vanishing would be an incalculable impoverishment of the sum of things. If we say that for all we know to the contrary, there is just one minor planet in a limitless field of stars where apple trees blossom and where songs are sung, then most of us would probably grant an important centrality to that planet." Objectively, it looks like these 2 points of view are in conflict with one another. Awareness of the sorrows and the challenges of the world, and awareness of the wholeness, the blessing of life. But I'm here to tell you today that they're integral, that they go together, that you cannot have progress unless you bring the two together, because it is only then that you have the invention of this thing called hope. Hope. And evolved spirituality does not turn away from the sorrows of the world. It confronts them with a consciousness of wholeness, optimism, and hope. In the 19th century, there was a transcendentalist named Theodore Parker. And whenever you hear me say transcendentalist, that means they're a precursor to our people. He said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a great speaker but also editor, a little over 100 years later, said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. This is an article of faith for our teaching. There's something very powerful and unique about religious science, our denomination. It's the only religious faith I know of that has faith in progress, that has faith in the humanity of good people to usher forth a greater reality where we all live in peace and freedom and oneness together, no exceptions. Not in some otherworldly dimension, but in this life. This life. It's a long time getting there. Don't get me wrong. And getting there involves the painful work of not covering up the pain of our history and the challenges that we face on a daily basis. But that's our work. In religious science, we don't have a set creation myth. We like all of them. But if we had one, it might go like this. In the beginning, all there was pure light. Magnificent, majestic spirit. In its fullness, in its wholeness, in its absolute love and grandeur. And this spirit invented a longing to know itself, to know its love, to know its fullness, to express its wholeness. And so it created time and space in which to view and experience itself. And it began what we might refer to as a descent. It kind of began to slow down, and it gave birth to the stars and the galaxies and the planets. And it slowed down until it became physical, material form. And then something occurred that the scientist Arthur Clarke called the turn, that this descent eventually began an ascent back to the truth of what it was. And it invented and turned into mineral life, vegetable life, animal life, human life, the birth of self-awareness, spiritual becoming, all on its way back to a realization of its perfection, its wholeness, its oneness. And yet, all the way along, the wholeness is always there within each and every one of us to awaken to and bring forth. Pretty cool story, huh? We're all just making it up as we go along, you know. But the point is progress. We're all moving forward. This is the truth of our spiritual life, and yet our founder, Ernest Holmes, tells us something very interesting about this one mind, that we're all one and lovey-dovey and warm and fuzzy and all of that. But at the same time, each of us inherits the entire consciousness of the human race. And when we look at that, there's a lot of beauty and a lot of wonder, but there's some dark stuff in there too, right? When we look at the whole history of the consciousness of the human race. Each of us, he says, inherits it. We might use the word today, generational trauma, that we all inherit the thinking of our ancestors, and it's up to us, through the power of our own individual consciousness, to work that stuff out, to get clear, to do our own work so that we can make a difference in the world. We don't do this by turning a blind eye to that, but we look directly in the mirror so that we can deepen and strengthen and grow and come out with that consciousness of wholeness, that consciousness of optimism, that consciousness of progress. What made Gandhi and King not only incredible spiritual beings, but effective in the challenges that they faced and the sorrows of the world is hope and optimism were always their number one. They never made anyone an enemy. In fact, they believed that their opponents had within them the ability to join their side. They weren't against, they weren't prone to humanizing or putting anyone down in order to lift themselves up. Gandhi, when he would be arrested for intentionally committing a crime, would demand that he be punished by the highest extent of the law, knowing that people were watching, knowing that he wanted to be a law-abiding citizen, but he could not follow this law that he believed at a human level was immoral. People began to see it, and colonialism, as we knew it in Britain and South Africa and India, began to waver and eventually disappear. Martin Luther King got to know a lot of police. He was arrested on a regular basis. And yet he always sought not to put them down, not to make them enemy, but to talk to them. They would argue about segregation. They would argue about interracial marriage. King would get to a comfort level and he'd say, "Hey, how much money do you make?" And a police officer might answer him and he'd say, "You know what? You ought to be marching with us. Come on. Come over." It's the hardest thing to do when we see a fractured world, fractured government, fractured divisiveness in our country, to bring to it a consciousness of wholeness. But that's our work. That's our calling and our charge as mile highers, religious scientists, enlightened citizens, however we want to put it. Spirituality without social justice is artificial. It's dead. It lacks the ability to have progress. In turn, social justice without spirituality is misguided and often cruel and stagnant. We often define our problem in spirituality as spiritual bypass. That's when we ignore the human effects of things and try to go immediately to our doctrinal or theoretical idea of what spiritual truth is. Your aunt died? Well, at least she's in a better place. Don't worry. Don't be sad. You've got cancer? Great. Your car got stolen? Well, just remember, life is good all the time, no matter what. There may be spiritual truths, but not in our experience here, right? We have to acknowledge the human experience to get to the spiritual realization. In the same way, in social justice, if we don't have hope, if we don't have optimism, if we don't have vision, we perish in our own judgment and in the midst of the sorrows of the world. We're very good at pointing out who the victim is and who the perpetrator is, but there's no healing. There's no growth. There's no coming together. Sean Ginwright, who wrote an incredible book called The Four Pivots, he defined this stagnation as problem loving. He said, the problem with problem loving is that we become satisfied with discussing the problem and uncomfortable with imagining solutions. He shares his own confession as a social justice advocate of teaching a large group of school administrators about the racial disparities taking place in education. And then suddenly one of the attendees asked if he had any ideas for solutions to these issues. And Ginwright said, the question puzzled me because my assumption was that once they understood how significant the disparities were in their schools, the principals and teachers would come up with solutions on their own. I was wrong. We can get, it's so important to define the problem, but we get stuck if we're not willing to co-create solution. And so I want to share 3 things today that help us combine confronting the sorrows of the world with a consciousness of healing and a consciousness of wholeness. The first is thoughts, prayers, and actions. Thoughts, prayers, and actions. If anyone's on social media, you recognize that there has been a separation between these, right? That thoughts and prayers are one thing and actions are another. And I get it. There's a mass shooting and the politician gets up and says, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, da-da-da-da. And someone on their side sees that and says, I don't want your thoughts and prayers. I need you to do something about this. And they're absolutely right in that sentiment. However, Gandhi tells us that prayer properly understood is the highest form of action. There's thoughts and prayers that are words, that are rituals, but truly, a prayer isn't a prayer until we've embodied it. What does it mean to speak your prayer in light of the challenges that you see in the world and then to embody it? To be a presence for understanding and for growth, for listening. I might be a little tired of the politician who comes in to their work thinking they know all the right solutions and answers. Give me the one that's willing to admit that they don't know all the answers, that's willing to create an environment of trust, listening, that's willing to embody that prayer of hope so that good intentioned people can come together to co-create the solutions to the challenges that face us and our children in school every day. What is that prayer that you've just been saying, and where are you called to embody it in your life, in your relationships, in all that you do? So combine thoughts, prayers, and actions. Second, a little silence can say a lot. A little silence can say a lot. What I mean by that is, for some of us, we see all these sorrows in the world. It's overwhelming, isn't it? And because we're such good people, we carry the weight of them on our shoulders until it feels like it's crushing us. Anybody resonate with that statement? Yeah, there's so much going on. It's scary. It's overwhelming. It's okay to put it down. It's okay to put it down and to get back to your center. As much as we need to confront the sorrows of the world, we do not want the sorrows of the world to be the source that feeds our consciousness, our heart, and our day-to-day life. That's why a little silence, getting quiet, and putting those problems aside is a good thing. Trust me, they will be there when you come back to them. In the social justice world, there's a phrase that silence is violence. And although I disagree with the statement, I 100% agree with the point. That when we see injustice in the world and we don't respond to it, or we try to avoid it or turn a blind eye to it, we are, in a sense, enabling it. At the same time, we can all be different in how we choose to respond to what confronts us in society. Howard Thurman, who was a key influence on Martin Luther King Jr., he wrote an incredible book called Jesus and the Disinherited that Martin Luther King Jr. carried with him wherever he went. And Howard Thurman was a mystic. I don't think he ever attended a protest in his life. The point being that we all get to respond in our own way to the sorrows that we see in the world. Don't let anyone tell you you're doing it wrong. Confront the sorrows of the world with your consciousness and recognize that that silence can say a whole lot about building that hope and optimism that helps you face the challenging realities that are in front of us as individuals, as people, as a country, and so on. Lastly, we are all capable of empathy. Each and every one of us is capable of empathy. And empathy is that feeling, that practice that begins to build the space for much needed healing and for transformation. When we are talking about social justice, there's this other really important point that sometimes if you're someone with a privilege, you don't understand what it's like for someone who doesn't have that privilege. I, as a privileged white male, can't fully understand the female experience, can't fully understand what it's like to be a person of color in America, don't always understand what it's like to go hungry or not have money. All that being said, I can try. I can try to have that understanding. And we never want to get so caught up in defining ourselves as victims or as perpetrators in such a way that we can't be human beings in community together. I've learned in my life, and I've learned as a minister, and I'll just speak to the United States of America, that we have these things called collective wounds. They're wounds that we all carry if we choose to have a consciousness as an American citizen. The wounds are racism, sexism, classism, and today it's mass shootings. All of these are a part of our history, and so when anything touches that collective wound, our job is to not cover up, not to mend it, but to come so present to it that we behold it in sacred space. We listen. We feel. And only when we're able to do that can this thing called healing begin to occur. We do it every time it happens. We don't rush in to fix because these things aren't fixable. They're who we are, and we can only create spiritual healing that leads to wisdom, oneness, and to understanding. As Sean Ginwright points out, he says, the most important aspect of social change is not problem analysis, power building, narrative change, or coalition building. It's healing. It's healing. So as we close this morning, I just invite you to think of that area in your own individual life that's calling for that consciousness of healing, for your greater listening, for your greater empathy. Maybe it's towards someone you love. Maybe it's finally having empathy for yourself. Where can you open up for that healing to take place? And there's so many to pick, but let's just think of one issue in our communities, in our country, or in our world where we can bring a more empathic heart, an open heart that doesn't seek to fix, to blame, to dehumanize, or to go to battle. But just even in our broken hearts, to be that space that has the courage to listen and trust that there is such thing as hope, that it seeks to make itself known in you and me, and in that it can help the world in its greater becoming. Moving into prayer this morning, I just invite any of our beautiful prayer practitioners who wish to stand to do so. They are here to pray with any of us who wants a prayer for anything going on in our lives, in our country, or in our world. Knowing that we co-create together this sacred space, I just affirm and know that each of us is an individual sanctuary for divine healing, for divine good, for divine courage. Giving thanks to fear not to confront that which challenges us, our kids, and our communities, but to confront it with such a strong and fervent love and knowingness and trust in the good that we become transformational presences for ourselves and for others. Opening up our consciousness to anywhere in life where we seek greater light, greater equality, greater liberty and freedom, greater justice. Let's know that as we create the consciousness for this justice and this liberty and this well-being in our own minds and hearts, we also bless it in these circumstances. Being a presence for change, we know that transformation is, and transformation is happening right here and right now. We let it be, we let it become, and so it is. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. To make a donation, please visit milehighchurch.org.